Alexander.
Here.
Commissioner Penny.
Here.
Commissioner Jarvis.
Here.
Commissioner Schneider.
Here. Here.
Chairman Roy.
Here. We always start our meeting with a prayer and pledge of allegiance. Nobody? I'll lead us in prayer.
Holy Father, thank you for gathering us here together this morning as a free people to discuss the business of Lapeer County. And as we do, we are mindful of the great blessing and the great responsibility that comes with that freedom and all those that came before us to give us that freedom. Help us to protect it and be mindful of it always, Lord. And help us to be mindful of our troops currently who are away from their families in foreign lands. Please keep them safe, bring them home soon to us, Lord. Lord, we ask for a blessing upon Lapeer County, all of its residents, all of our staff, especially again those that put themselves in harm's way for us. As we prepare to conduct the business of the county this morning, Lord, give us the wisdom necessary to make the best decisions we can for our constituents. We ask all this in your name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before the board, you'll see today's agenda. What I'm going to do with you, Steve, if it's okay, under department head updates, I'm going to move you up.
Okay.
To department head up before we have public time.
Okay.
So I know you have time constraints, so we'll move you up there.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a agenda before the board. I need approval of this agenda.
Chairman, I'll move the agenda with that change, and also one other housekeeping item that was pointed out to me. So in your agenda package, there's a 8A and an 8B and then a second 8B. So for clarification of numbers, 8A, the draft motions from the art committee meeting, we're going to renumber that 8-1, and the draft motions from art committee that's continued, we're going to number that 8-2, and then personnel motions 8B. So that there'll be a distinction between all those for the clerk when we discuss those. And then also under those draft personnel motions of 8B, everybody should have in front of them a revised draft personnel motions. That's because there was one that was inadvertently left off. So in your packet, the 8B personnel motions, just cross that out and refer to the handout 8B motions, because it has all 11 of them on there. That would be my housekeeping comment and doing the agenda. Support work.
We have a motion and support. All in favor of the motion, see if I say an aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carries. Department head updates. Would any department head like to give us an update this morning?
First, I just want to update regarding what many are referring to as the booster dose for the mRNA vaccines. I'm sure most of you heard that the ACIP approved the use of a third dose of the Pfizer and Moderna, which are the mRNA vaccines, this past Friday. It's not a booster as we might think of getting a booster, such as you getting a tetanus booster. Instead, it's considered to be a third dose for those whose immune systems may not have responded as strongly to the vaccine as most healthy people would, due to it's a problem with writing up my notes, then I have to get lost in them. Due to a health condition that compromises their immune system. We have begun giving the third dose at the health department. It's meant for those who are moderately or severely immune compromised. However, there is no need for a doctor's note, etc. If an individual asks for it and states that they meet the criteria, is being there from the direction of our medical director. Pharmacies have also initiated this. Then last, and I'm not gonna update you on numbers today, you can look, you can see my updates on Friday. But this is meant for situational awareness for you. And I'm just gonna preface this again, I'm not looking for a political debate, nor am I trying to start one. I just need to let you know what's going on locally that affects our health department staff. As you know, there's an individual sitting in our jail right now who threatened to physically harm our staff members. Since then, we continue to get phone calls, as I mentioned last week, from both extremes, many that are just plain nasty, putting it nicely. As you also know, we've endeavored to assist those who do want to be vaccinated, both for COVID and childhood immunities, by providing them throughout the community with the use of our trailer. Recent situations, however, are causing us to have to pull back on some of that, at least while tensions remain high. I'm frankly concerned with the direction that things continue to move in. Most recently, we've had an individual come over to the trailer with a very angry demeanor, telling the staff that they don't belong there amongst those who chose not to get vaccinated. He went on to tell them that they didn't want to be exposed to people getting the vaccine. It's not the first time we've been met with such, but this latest incident was enough that the staff felt threatened, enough that they packed up early and ended up leaving. They did call for assistance, but 33 minutes later, no one had arrived and they packed up and left. Well, I don't use the word gentleman, angrily sped off after learning that they would be there in another hour, stating that was too long. They knew he had dropped off a child for practice and they were concerned that he may come back. What should have been a public health issue has become very political and has been for the last 2 years. I hear people talk about their choice. I get that. But what I don't understand is their need to treat those who are vaccinated or choose to be vaccinated in such a manner, in such a rude and threatening way. When you see your doctor, you are their patient. In public health, community is our patient. Something I teach every new nurse that comes to me from a hospital setting and who has not done public health. It was the removal of a handle from a water pump years ago in Europe that stopped a cholera outbreak. It's because of public health that we can eat relatively safely in restaurants and not worry about raw sewage routinely running into our water sources. Vaccines are one of the best tools we have to fight disease. The COVID vaccines are one of those tools. You can't shed the virus or affect others when you have received the shot, which is what this individual was implying and what we've heard from others. There's so much false misinformation out there that I don't have time to go over right now. I even read recently where people needing blood transfusions don't want blood from someone who's been vaccinated. We don't need to shut things down. We just need to be smart and use the tools that we have, such as, lost my place, protecting our staff with screening, etc. Unfortunately, I'm not the best at impromptu speaking, and my lousy ears kept me from hearing all of the information that was going on last week. But I read the final version in the minutes of what was passed. For the record, I don't agree with it. We need to get the politics out of the plethora of misinformation that has flooded social media. For now, I ask that we remember that the rights and responsibilities for public health, letting people know the tools that they can use to help stop the spread of disease. Some of the very tools that everyone is fighting against. That's it. Just wanted to voice my thoughts and let you know that for the safety of my staff, we're going to have to make some adjustments.
Thank you, Kathy. The other elected officials or department heads like to give us an update this morning? Pardon? Yes. Steve, I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you. My name is Steve Gray. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Association of Counties. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here today. One of my roles as Executive Director is to kind of go do outreach to all our counties, and I was telling Commissioner Warren I try to visit about 40 to 45 county board meetings a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if there's only so many second Tuesdays and third Thursdays of the month, they start to catch up to you. So thank you for letting me be here today. I have handed out the slides that I'm going to run through. Feel free to interrupt me with any questions at any time, or if you prefer to wait to the end, I'm flexible. I can go either way. So starting with slide number 2, just an overview of MAC. You know, we have 16 elected county commissioners from across the state, 2 seats from each of our regions. You can kind of see the regional breakdown right there. Our board typically meets about 4 times a year. We have 2 conferences, so they typically meet at those conferences, and then they'll meet typically in June and then in December. And we do have elections that are most of the time held at our annual conference in August. We do have an open at-large seat on the MAC board at this time. Slide 3 kind of goes through our MAC leadership. Current MAC president is Veronica Kleinfeld from Macomb County. First vice president is Phil Kyers from Ottawa County. And second vice president is Stan Ponstein from Kent County. Moving to slide 4, we kind of look at what we do in 3 different ways. We obviously do advocacy, and that's definitely a team effort. We're your voice in Lansing, but we definitely appreciate it when you guys help echo what we say here in the district when the local elected officials are back in the district. We also work very closely with NACO at the national level on national issues. We also do education. I mentioned our conferences. We do 2 conferences a year. We have an upcoming conference this fall. We also do one every spring in Lansing. That's considered our legislative conference. And we typically in the summer provide an educational opportunity for our regional summits, which are just one-day educational sessions that usually hit about 4 or 5 different topics. We also, in combination with MSU Extension, do the new county commissioner school after the election every 2 years of county commissioners. So a lot of different ways that we provide information. Of course, we have a website that has a ton of information on it as well. And then, of course, services. We have a variety of services we provide through our organization. You guys participate in the nationwide 457 plan, which is a retirement plan that we do with NACO. We also have a variety of services that we provide as well. Moving to slide 5, of course, the American Rescue Plan is a hot topic right now. I'm sure you guys have talked about it ad nauseum, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. One thing I do want to caution, and the question knows this too, is take your time with the money. There's no reason to rush at this point. We are working with the state to provide a match program that has probably about 7 or 8 buckets where we propose to the state here, you have $3.9 billion that we think you should spend this way to allow counties, other local units of government to match you some of their funds to match. Specifically, because if you look at some of the townships and some of the money they're getting, it's not going to go very far. So they're going to need to have match programs. So if the state's putting in some funding, the county can, the townships or cities can, it's going to make those dollars go a lot further. We met with the governor's office. They're very positive about it. We met with both legislatures, side of the legislature on it. They're very positive about it. Now it's just getting them back into town and seeing some things move forward. So just so you know, that's what we're doing at the state level with their funds that we propose for them. Moving to slide 6, that kind of looks at some of the our legislative priorities for this session. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I'm going to more detail with the next slide. So slide 7, 4-year county commissioner terms. This is something we've been working on for years and years and years. We're one of 5 states that has 2-year county commissioner terms. Most states allow for 4 years for county commissioners. This legislation has passed out of the Senate overwhelmingly with it passed 32-4. It is now in elections or local government in the House, which is chaired by former county commissioner Julie Calley. We did last session. This legislation passed out of her committee, so we are expecting it to get out of committee in the next few weeks, if not once they get back into session, and then we'll have it on the House floor. And once it passes the House floor, so there will be no changes, then it would go to the governor, which we would expect it to be signed. So kind of the furthest we've gotten with this after probably 8 to 10 years of working on it, so we're pretty excited about that. Slide 8, reforms to local courts. This kind of gets back to the Trial Court Funding Commission recommendations that came out about 2 years ago, right before COVID hit. There was a lot of momentum behind that at the time, basically because there was legislation that passed that would, there was a ruling that would have prohibited counties from charging fees in the court system for those who use the courts. As you guys know, courts are very expensive to operate, Had we not gotten legislation passed to extend the opportunity to pass on those fees, would have cost counties about probably about 200 million statewide. So the local trial court funding commission was created to kind of look at how courts are funded. They came out with about 7 different recommendations. So that legislation is starting to creep back up again. This kind of talks about it a little bit. We are supportive of those recommendations because, again, courts are expensive to operate. A lot of the funding comes from the local level, and it should be more state-based. Moving to slide 9, local government finance reform. So this kind of goes through various ways. We're looking at changes to local government finance. We're primarily funded right now through two areas: property taxes and state revenue sharing dollars. State revenue sharing dollars, of course, are appropriated annually and can be appropriated away at any point in time. So if you look at the bullet point number 1 on there, we're looking to secure a dedicated revenue stream for county revenue sharing. So basically a virtual lockbox where the state legislature couldn't raise those funds and appropriate it to different areas. Some of the other areas we're looking at stabilizing local government finance is through making sure that any sort of mandated services are funded by the state. That's a requirement. We've seen that recently with 17-year-olds moving 17-year-olds out of the adult system into the juvenile system, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, how that's been funded. A tourism reinvestment excise tax. This came about where many RDP counties are seeing a huge influx of tourism upstate, which is great, but it's very difficult for them to fund the services that are required to keep up with that. Their sheriff's departments are maxed out, their EMS is maxed out. This would allow for an excise tax, which would dedicate those funds for those purposes. And that would be allowable statewide. Reopen the window of opportunity for the foreclosure unit to be the state instead of the local level. This came out of the Raffaele decision. And this was available back in the late 90s. We had about 10, 11 counties that the state foreclosing unit rather than the county the foreclosing unit. That way they take on all those costs and all the burden of that. And with the Raffaele decision, we're looking to reopen that window so counties could opt back to have the state do that. And then of course exempt special millages from tax capture. This is something we've talked about for a while. Those special millages are voted on for a specific purpose and should be put towards those funds. It should be siphoned off for EDAs or TIFAs or things like that. While great economic development entities, those funds should go for those special millages. So moving to slide 10, property tax exemption. This is something we consistently fight and we wanted to touch on. We're always fighting property tax exemptions at the state level. Most recently, solar, alternative energy, broadband, heavy equipment, micro-fulfillment centers. I mean, these are all things the state wants to provide a property tax exemption for, and of course, it hurts your pocketbooks. So what we've proposed is, okay, if you want to do that at the state level, that's fine, but make sure you're reimbursing locals, and we're seeing that with the disabled veterans property tax exemption. There's been 2 proposals put out, legislation introduced, that would actually pay the locals back for that property tax exemption, because we feel like while we love to help our veterans, we feel like it should be done at the local level, and if the state's going to vote on something, then they should reimburse the locals for that. So we'll see if we can get that legislation passed through this session. Moving to slide 11, human services, another issue that obviously counties work with a lot. I talked a little bit about the 17-year-old. That is being funded at the full level of 100% reimbursement from the state. So we're happy to see that. House Bill 4122, which was a 1-year hiatus from forcing counties to pay what they had paid for their veteran services in their county, did pass. So basically every county is eligible for that veteran service fund for 1 year, because obviously with COVID, it was difficult for counties to maintain that funding level. So we're happy to see that. So now every county has an equal opportunity to go for that fund. And then we have 2 proposals that have been introduced for mental health. The majority leader in the Senate has introduced his plan, and Representative Whiteford has introduced her plan. They vary in different ways. If you remember back a few years when Lieutenant Governor Calley was Lieutenant Governor, he introduced a plan that was similar to Majority Leader Shirkey's. Basically, what they both kind of get it is removing local control, and we definitely have a problem with that. Now, that being said, we are working with both of them to kind of try to come to some agreement. Those talks are continuing. We don't see any swift movement seen on these legislation. So just keep in mind, you'll be hearing updates from us, throughout the rest of this year, probably in the next year. Moving to slide 12, 911 funding sunset. So the Emergency 911 Service Enablement Act expires at the end of this year. That's a critical way that 911 is funded within our state. So Representative Calley has introduced 5026, which would extend that funding authority up until 2027. It would ensure that those fees are targeted with the projected cost of the statewide Next Gen program. So that's the upgraded kind of 911 system that kind of everyone's moving to at this point. It would increase the prepaid surcharge on phones from 5% to 6.5%, and increase the postpaid fees from 5 to 7%. Now, that being said, it does provide for a fee rollback if those revenues exceed the cost of those 911. So if those increases exceed the cost of the Next Gen 911, it would roll back those fees to the appropriate level of the fund of the expense. So that was good to see. That is up in the Communications and Technology Committee, which is chaired by Shelby. Moving to 13. Finally, the legislative issue that I wanted to touch on, of course, infrastructure is a big issue, both at the federal level and always at the local level. When we look at what the feds are looking at passing, the state budget has some money appropriated for it. You can kind of see those there: $300 million for bridges, $290 million for Michigan Clean Water Plan, $40 million for high water levels and erosion, and $15 million for dam safety. Of course, you got the whatever it is, $1.9 trillion at the federal level that could be coming down for infrastructure. Where we're seeing more needs at the local level is PFAS is becoming more and more widespread. And it's falling on locals to kind of remediate it. How do they remediate it? What does remediation look like? So we're going to make sure that there's funding there from the state, at least from the state and from the feds on that, to make sure that you guys don't have to pay for that because you don't have the funds for it. Moving to slide 14, those are our policy committees. So when I'm talking about this legislation and our position, that's where it all comes from, our policy committees. Kyle sits on our environmental policy committee, which is very helpful. And if anyone else would like to sit on any of our policy committees, we'd love to have you. We even had the virtual office. We were cool enough to have the virtual office option pre-COVID. So we always had people videoing in and everything. So you don't have to come to Lansing. You can see when they meet. You meet typically about 6 times a year in the fall and the spring. And then we bring those platforms to our board. Our board will make any changes, and we'll be. And if they don't have changes, then we take it right to the membership at our annual conference, and then the membership votes on those platforms. And that's what we'll be doing at this conference as well. So slide 15 kind of talks about our MAC PAC. We do have a small PAC in town. We use that to support the 31 former county commissioners that are in the legislature right now, the highest we've ever seen. So we'd love any support that you can provide. $10, $20, whatever you can do, we always appreciate that. Moving to slide 16, that's our government affairs team. Dina Bosworth, of course, is our director of government affairs. She's been with us for a long time. I know many of you have met her. With her speak, she's very knowledgeable on taxation issues. She also handles some transportation, environmental issues as well. Megan Kaikorian is our government affairs associate. She handles our health and human services and judiciary issues. And then Hannah Sweeney is our government affairs assistant. She kind of makes sure the train stays on the tracks in the office when it comes to legislative stuff. So she's very important. Slide 17 talks about our conferences. Like I mentioned, we do have our annual conference coming up at the end of September up on Mackinac Island. And then our legislative conference will be in the spring, end of March in Lansing. And then finally, slide 18 kind of talks about our communication tools. We have Facebook, Twitter. We do a podcast typically every week or every other week. We have Instagram. We send out a weekly legislative update every Friday. Hopefully everyone's getting. We've moved to a now printed newsletter. So hopefully you've seen our new printed newsletter. That used to be digital. We've gone back to printing because we found that people like to have something to lay around their office. We've gotten great feedback on that. So hopefully everyone's getting that. We try to keep you updated as many different ways as possible without overwhelming you. So we appreciate that. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
When we talk about this issue with the 17-year-olds,
Yes.
and that's changing, of course, within a month.
Yes.
And the state says they'll pay for the first 3 years.
Yep.
Would Matt continue to aggressively pursue the state to continue to pay for that?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't dump down on the counties like they normally dump programs on the county?
Absolutely.
Because they can be very expensive to our child care fund.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's something we will continue to advocate for. It actually is part of the budget process. It's in the budget for this year. It is 100% funded in this budget process, but it would be something we would deal with every annually.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Other questions? Brian?
On your slide 9, the exempt special millages from tax capture.
Yes.
Can you go into a little more detail on that as far as who's heading that up and when is that going to be in front of the legislative body?
So this is something we've been talking about for years, working with, we have a litany of reforms we'd like to see with DDAs and TIFAs. because right now, there aren't a lot of options for counties to get out of a TDA or TIPA. And by get out of, I mean not allow for them to capture county tax dollars, basically, is what we do. And part of that is the special millage issue. It's something we've been talking about. It kind of gets caught up in that bigger discussion. We're going to try to take a different angle with it. There's no legislation introduced at this point, but we will probably take a smaller bite at it and see if we can just get that issue taken care of, where special millages would not be siphoned off for DDAs and TIPAs. They would be used specifically for that purpose that they were voted on.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but what we've run up against in the past is that we hear from our legislators that our position absolutely makes sense. Then you have like the Chamber of Commerce and places that have bigger dollars represent what the legislatures do with bigger constituencies.
Yeah.
Opposing us on it, and that's what's hurt us in the past.
We kind of run up against everyone on that issue, to be honest with you, because it's one of the few issues we actually differ with the Township Association and Michigan Municipal League. They're kind of on the other side of that issue because that helps their downtown areas, there's DDAs, associations, and things like that. So that is typically what we run up against in the past. So we will continue to try to advocate for it again.
Well, the unfortunate part is that it's stealing from the tax dollars, the taxpayers. If they vote on the special millage, whether it's fire, EMS, or whatever it is, and then the DDA and that sort of stuff can get their hands on a portion of it. It's just not right.
Yeah, that's our position as well. We believe the people vote on that for a specific purpose, and those funds should go for that, whether it's the Sheriff's Department, Veterans, whatever, like you mentioned.
We understand the heavily you're up against it, because that's been our position too. We've had that discussion with other entities, that it's just not the right thing to do. Sometimes just because something is legally in writing, you can do it, doesn't mean you should do it. If somebody goes to vote for veterans, it doesn't say veterans and this other entity.
Yes.
We understand the argument perfectly. I'm just trying to make sure.
We had an agreement pretty much taken care of in this county with the locals, that they would not capture extra voted. That has changed.
I see, yeah.
And when you start capturing senior millages and veterans millages and what they're capturing now, some of the locals are, and I'm not sure that they need that much more money. But that becomes a real issue.
Absolutely.
Well,
I wanted to alert you, in our packet, we have a draft resolution on the use of ARP funds
Okay.
in match. It's different from what you sent out, draft form. We'll see where it ends up.
I mean, we pretty much used the boiler.
Okay.
Plain, I know one of the changes that we changed the wording on, we approved the program, because there's no program in front of us. So we approved the concept
Okay.
of the programs, the SMILE, things like that. And clearly, we're a very conservative board, and we're not wise on the decision that was made at Washington to burden our children and our grandchildren, which we think is going to happen here. But by the same token, we want to make sure that we get the best use of our dollars, and we appreciate you guys clarifying that position. It's just one more tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, and I understand there's the concern of, yes, the amount of money that was approved. When you start talking to people in Washington and NACO and our counterparts there, their feeling on it was that ship was sailing. So they wanted to make sure that if that ship was sailing, that money should come direct to counties, not go through the state. We know what happens when it goes through the state, it starts going to different areas. So if it was going to go, let's get it direct to counties so they can use it as best they see fit. So.
resolutions, are not binding. My concern over this resolution, we don't want any of this money attached to the state at all. We don't want the monies that came to the county for any way the state to get their hands on that particular money, because you know what happens once they do that. So, yep, those were my concerns over this.
There is an added whereas.
I understand there is an added whereas, Dial. There's always an added whereas. They find ways around it. I'm not saying that Mac would do that.
No, we want it to be optional. So that's what we're advocating at the state is let it be an option for locals to match if they want to. If they don't want to, then they don't have to.
Just a quick question. Are you gonna be sticking around for the meeting or are you taking?
I was gonna take off.
Okay, well, the quick question,
Okay.
where did Max stand on Hill?
Oh, yeah, we're very supportive of Phil.
Supportive of it.
Yeah,
That's all
absolutely.
I wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, one of those veteran property tax exemption reimbursement issues that I brought up, one of the proposals is to attach that reimbursement to PIL. So the PIL would go up based on your property tax exemption loss attached to your PIL.
Okay,
Yeah, we've advocated for PIL for years.
thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
Good to see you back.
Do we know when face-to-face committee meetings will begin?
We're talking about that now. We'll probably end up leaving it up to the chair of that committee to determine that. To be honest, our committee participation went up pretty good when we just went to virtual, even though we had the virtual option the whole time. We had more people participating, but we'll probably leave it up to our committee chair and see what they want to do.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thanks.
You did a nice job. Any other department heads or elected officials like to speak to this board this morning? Hearing and seeing no one, I close department head elected official updates. That brings us down to first public time. Would anybody like to speak to the board, to this board during the first public time? I'll get to you, Kurt.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Diana Snow. I'm a Lapeer resident. A few weeks ago, my husband and I listened as the person currently acting as the President of the United States stated that soon there would be people going door to door inquiring about each and every American's vaccination status. This under the guise of making the COVID-19 shots more readily available to those who had not yet received them. For us and many others in Lapeer County, we feel that this crosses a line, not only from a medical privacy perspective, but also as a violation of our rights to peacefully enjoy our property without government interference. We decided to reach out to some friends, acquaintances, and other members of the community who have seen enough of this rapid erosion of our freedoms, and collectively ask those of you who govern this county to stand beside us and keep these vaccine canvassers off our doorsteps. I have with me a petition signed by over 100 of the people that have elected each and every one of you, asking for you to pass a resolution that prohibits anyone acting on behalf of any government entity to enter onto private property without permission in order to gather personal medical information or data regarding vaccination status. The people that have signed this petition come from a wide range of locations, include those who have been vaccinated and those who have not. Some are Republican, some are Democrat, some are independent voters. They all have one thing in common, and that is they just want the government to leave them alone. And if you think this is something that's not a reality, I have here some recent job postings looking for candidates to fill these vaccine canvasser positions right here in the state of Michigan. Within these help wanted advertisements, you will find even greater reason not to allow these canvassers into our community. Let me just read a portion of one of the job descriptions. Canvassers will be hanging flyers, passing out flyers, and walking communities to ask citizens if they have registered to be vaccinated or been vaccinated. If the answer is yes, great. If the response is no, they will then need to ask if they have transportation to the hub site. If the answer is yes, provide the hub location. If the answer is no, they will call back to the hub and request that the vaccination team come to the location to vaccinate the citizens. So let me repeat that last line. If the answer is no, they will call back to the hub and request that the vaccination team come to the location to vaccinate the citizens. This clearly sounds like something you'd read in a dystopian novel. Additionally, an organization called Community Outreach Group, or COG, is a listed sponsor of many of these job openings. COG states in the description of their business model, and I quote, envisions a world where people, including the most marginalized, can express their truest selves, imagine infinite possibilities, and feel radical joy, vulnerability, and empowerment. To me, this sounds exactly like the social rhetoric we have been hearing in this country for the last year and a half. Finally, the last point I'd like to make about this organization that wants to send a canvasser to your door is their open alliance with Planned Parenthood of America. Yes, the same Planned Parenthood that is responsible for more abortions than any organization in this country. Could somebody please tell me why an entity that openly advocates and aggressively lobbies for the termination of the unborn and unwanted is suddenly interested in the health and well-being of the rest of us American citizens? In closing, I would once again ask you to consider passing a resolution prohibiting these canvassers from coming to our properties. If they're allowed to come to our homes and press for personal medical information under the guise of the greater good of society, what will be next? Would you like a copy of the petition and the helpline item?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Would anybody else like to address this board during the first public time?
Hello, my name is Kenneth Kopnick. Everybody can take a deep breath. I'm not going to talk about COVID. What I am going to talk about is, I'm going to tick everybody off just as bad, and that is the veterans exemption on property tax. I have sat on the board in Oregon Township, Property Tax Review Board in Oregon Township for 13 years. And it is mandated that if a veteran comes in and fills out their paperwork, has their letter from the VA, that they are 60% disabled and unemployable because of it, or they are receiving 100% disability, that we have to issue the exemption. We can apply no asset test to them. They can own businesses. I know several of them. I have worked with them. And they are collecting GM pensions while they are collecting their disability. And I started doing the math in my head. And if you've got a guy that came out of the war, Vietnam era, and immediately applied for his disability, I've seen values, anything, depends on what disability they have, anything from $3,000 a month to $3,600 a month. Now, at $3,600 a month, when they hit their 30-year mark of disability payments, they have collected $1,296,000 that everybody in this room has contributed to. Now, I have talked to senators, I have talked to state reps, you can attach whatever name you want to it, and been told that nobody is going to revisit this because it is political suicide. But in the wisdom of the state, and no offense, but everybody here is old enough, they can remember, it used to be your property did not go up for sale for taxes till you hit your 3rd year delinquent. Now it's 2 years. And Joe Schmo walks in and wants a hardship exemption on his property for medical, catastrophic incident for the year, whatever. The state requires the board to apply an asset test. They have to disclose what they have in the bank, what they made for the year, if they own stocks, if they have a motor home, a boat, whatever. We are required to apply an asset test to the average Joe that walks in. Not a bet. Now in all their wisdom, it used to be, there was a stipulation in the rules that we could give what was called a compassionate exemption. Somebody midway through the year, they were just staying ahead of the tax sale, they were working, they were taking care of kids. Catastrophic incident, they could come in and say, this happened, this is going on, I'm fighting with insurance companies, waiting for a check. And we could give what was called a compassionate exemption. The only stipulation was we had to state specifically why we did it. Now, in all their wisdom, now the state has pulled that away from us. In 13 years, I think we used it 4 times for people that have been in car accidents, this and that, medical things came up. But now the state's pulled that away from us. Yet all the time, a vet, they can have $1 billion in the bank, they can run a $10 million business, and we cannot apply the asset test to them. You know, it's just, I have sat in a jail cell, I've been shot at, and nothing makes me clench up more than when a politician tells me they are acting in our best interest. It is just not fair. They are taking it away from the poor guy that's working, fighting, trying to stay ahead. And it's got to the point the state trainers have actually stated in training sessions, the state is getting worried because we're having an influx of people coming like to the west side of the state and buying McMansions on the lake because here they're tax exempt. Just my personal opinion, I think something needs to be adjusted. I know it's never going to be because, like I've been told, it's a political time bomb. But I think the public needs to know what's actually going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address this board during the first public time?
Yes, I just have a couple of things. First of all, it goes back to the sanctuary, the comments that were made last week. And just because one party uses the word sanctuary in one way, and it's improper, especially sanctuary cities for illegal aliens, doesn't mean that it should not be used in a good way. And it just, thinking about it this last week, it's just like the whole gun issue. Just because one person uses a gun in the wrong way doesn't mean that everybody should have their guns taken away because they're all going to use it in the wrong way. So that was just my thoughts on the sanctuary. And I attended yesterday the peaceful protest in Genesee County in front of the Board of Commissioners meeting that it was going to go on after this. After the peaceful protest, I was very happy to see that some of the media actually said there were hundreds of people there, because there were hundreds of people there. There were moms, there were dads, there were grandparents, there were children, there were Board of Commissioner members from Genesee County, there were Board of Education members from Genesee County, and it was all about unmasking these children. And they had, there was a time when there were speakers that got up and spoke, and common sense. It was just common sense. And I have to tell you, I met people from Oakland County, Genesee County, Lapeer County, and there are so many people that are going to pull their kids. They're going to. They're done with public education. They're done with having their kids indoctrinated, not for just one reason, but for many reasons. I spent 12 years on the Board of Education in my community, 12 years. And I look back on that now and I go, wow. I gave my life, I gave my 12 years of motherhood to all those kids in that community to stand up for what is right and to make education, not some of this other stuff, to keep some of these other things out of the school. And I just look back and I'm just so sad about it. I begged parents, please do not take your kids. Please don't leave me alone. I'm here for your kids. Please don't homeschool. Please don't put them in private schools. Keep them in Lakeville. I'm a Lakeville kid. My kids are Lakeville kids. And I begged them and they left anyway. And now they're leaving the schools. So I'm really sad about that. And then the other thing is I just had said something at our Lakeville Board of Education meeting a couple weeks ago. And it all goes back to when the government becomes totalitarian and provides people with free utilities, government-funded education, free food, free housing, free health care, and convinces them to agree that protecting themselves isn't necessary because the government will do that. It is very necessary for them to protect themselves. The government can then tell you which utilities you need, if and where and when you will receive an education and health care, what you will eat, where you will live, and whether or not you will receive any of these things. And I'm really sad that more and more people are dependent on this government and not dependent on themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to address this board during the first public time? Kurt, do you want to talk to us?
Sure.
Remember, Kurt, hold it to 3 minutes now.
Right.
Don't have my watch with me, so I'll trust you.
I got 3, but it's not 3, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, first I'd like to update us as much as I can. This is August 1st, Lapeer County Press, COVID-19. We have no new deaths at that time, and nothing has changed since July 23rd. And we have a grand total for the whole time of 204. So I guess that's about 12 a month. And they say it's from COVID, but you know, these statistics, the PCR tests are false positive. Geez, I don't know how much I can describe in one sentence. You get a death certificate, but they say, hey, you better mark it COVID. We got to keep that numbers up, keep the paranoia alive. And that's there is a group of mass deceivers called ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, Facebook, Google, YouTube, and yeah, I'm sorry. Now, I gave out some flyers earlier, and we're talking about shots. The young lady was talking about shots there. They're getting a name called needle Nazis. They don't want them around. If they want to go get a shot, they can go to the health department and get them. They don't need them. They don't need somebody peddling, pushing, you know, their crap. And there's enough information in those handouts from doctors around the world who said these shots are questionable. You don't know what's going to happen. You're not unsure of your results. And there's been a massive amount of people have reported to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System, which reports on adverse events. Deaths, blood clots, reproductive issues, it goes on and on and on. This thing needs to be shut down, kicked out of this county for good, and kicked out of the state. Because, you know, you've got they call it a vaccine, but they don't know what it's going to do. They've got spike proteins, they've got T cells. I'm just a truck driver, but so many questions in here, I never get it in me. And in addition, speaking of truck drivers, nurses represented by Teamsters Local 332 in Flint have said you will not ever jab us with unauthorized, unapproved vaccines. And I could go on and on, but I'll shut up. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Would anybody else like to address this board this morning for the public time?
William Hamilton, spoken to you before, live in Lapeer Township. A member of the Lapeer County Tea Party, our community education group. Many of you have spoken to us there before. I just wanted to say that I would like to call for the firing of the health director for the Lapeer Health Department. As public officials, you guys are accountable to the public. You should be responsive to the public. And our group has tried multiple times to get the health director to come speak to us, speak to the public about the COVID situation in this county. And the response has been incredibly disappointing. Our latest response out of her was, I don't do public talks. I'm sorry, you're a public official in a capacity as health director. You don't get that choice but to address the public. So I just want to say it's incredibly disappointing. You guys have the power to fire her, and you should. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address this board during the first public time? Yes, I just want to talk to us about anything. I was talking to you, Crystal.
Nice big saucers there.
Yeah. Hearing and seeing no one else that wants to address this during the first public time.
Mr. Chairman, point order, we can take care of one also, the minutes. Item number 1 on the agenda, the minutes from the previous.
Oh, okay. All right. trying to adjust this agenda to help everybody out this morning. We missed the consideration of draft minutes from the August 5th, 2021 full meeting.
Make a motion.
Or
We have a motion and approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on, the drain commissioner is stricken from this agenda. It's just removed to replace at a later meeting. American Rescue Plan Resolution, request to approve the amended resolution for the American Rescue Plan. Referred from full board on August 12th with authority to act.
Mr. Chairman, I had discussed last week the idea, and I just shared it with Steve Curry from that. The one change that I wanted to see was that we support the concept, not necessarily in particular plan of program, because we don't have a finalized plan of program. Dial had a few more additions besides that, so I gave Dial that one proposed change, and he made a few other proposed changes for the board to consider this morning, so that's Dial's.
Those two additions that I made would be the first whereas and the last whereas. I think the board can read them. They're pretty clear, and we really talked about the purpose of them when we were talking to Steve. One other thing, though, I noticed that I missed was that normally we also direct that a copy of the resolution be sent somewhere. And so probably we need to add on that it be sent to our state legislators, governor.
But we don't have a plan to approve. This is just a concept, like,
Well, the resolution.
But the resolution itself.
Yeah.
Would say that we support the concept.
okay.
And to other counties is typically, I think, the standard verbiage that we use for what we do with the resolution when we approve it.
With that explanation.
Doreen, are you getting all the Dial's orders? And
Yep.
these all have to be sent?
With that explanation, I'll move the resolution in front of us, number 5.
Support.
Clerk, please call,
Glad to entertain any questions.
would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
Commissioner Henning,
Yes?
Commissioner Jarvis. Yes. Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Yes.
Commissioner Zender,
Yes.
Chairman Ross.
Yes, it's unanimous this morning. Moving on. Talk about the friend of the court requesting newly amended cooperative reimbursement program contract to extend the expiration date from 2021 through 2023.
Morning.
Morning, Commissioners.
Hey, well, do you have a time on this?
Excuse me?
It has to be done, do you have?
It needs to be authorized by the end of September. You have until October 1.
Okay, that's fine. We get time then to put it through our normal channels. Okay, go ahead.
I'm just here before you, Commissioners, to ask for expansion of the present contract, which would expand from 2017 to 2023. The contract originated in 2016. This would permit the friend of the court to utilize state money, assuming that our local budget permits us to maximize our budget. If we don't, then we return some of that money to no penalty. Kind of a win-win, try to get the maximum from the grant, and if we don't utilize it, it gets returned without penalty.
Any questions?
Mr. Henning?
Yep.
Indeed.
Significant change. And I grant that you weren't here 5 years ago, so
The most noticeable that I'm aware of is that they've updated some requirements when the staff utilizes federal tax information. Some of that is such as the fingerprint requirement, which we've done in our office, and there's only 2 more individuals who will be done in the prosecuting attorney's office to comply with that. Increase in training that is necessary, not onerous, but those are the only noticeable changes that I'm aware of.
nothing that concerns you.
No.
I'd also mention, I did ask last meeting about the number of clients and families that you were involved with. That you may want to talk about that publicly, and you added on questions, that number is a little bit.
It's not Lapeer centric.
Right. So if you want, may want to explain that.
So last week I came before this board to inform you that August was Child Support Month in the state of Michigan. Commissioner Henning inquired the number of clients that Lapeer County bring the court serve with respect to child support. That number is 15,698 individuals, excuse me. That does not mean those are all individuals that reside in the county of Lapeer. An example I gave would be if, let's say the state of Michigan had a case with a family and the mother and children reside in the state of Michigan, father moved to the state, mother and family reside in the state of Florida, father moved to the state of Michigan, they may ask us to enforce that. That would go on our books, so we would count those individuals residing in Florida because we are responsible for taking that money and dispersing it to those individuals.
Even though the husband, former husband doesn't live in the state.
Well, in that example, he
Or
did live in the
in the
state.
county.
And theoretically, if he resided in the county, that's why it was transferred, then they could move, and we would still have the responsibility of enforcement absent an order changing jurisdiction as to who's enforcing. And that would also include temporary placement for foster care, things of that nature.
It's still a huge number.
Commissioner Center.
So with that, if the former husband worked in Lapeer County, it lived in Oakland County, then would that be Oakland County's problem?
I believe it would be transferred to the jurisdiction where the individual resides, but it would be at the time that it was sent to the request. So then a few months later, they may move. We may not decide to transfer it to a adjoining county because it doesn't seem beneficial for the work needed. We can do the enforcement just as well, so we may retain that. If he moved up north, we could continue to retain it, or we may ask the county of North to receive the transfer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We got a motion?
I'll move it.
No support. You want a question? You have a question?
No, I said I'll move it.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a motion and support. All in favor, should say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Brandon Historic Courthouse Committee request to waive fees for use of the historic courthouse re-fence.
Yes. I did up the request and full of motion, possible motions. And there's a little bit of the history, not a lot. And also it was brought to my attention that, there is, when we adopted the new policy for the historical courthouse and grounds, we do have on there that no rental fee assessed for meetings sponsored by the Lapeer County Department or boards which county representatives with voting rights. But I'm asking that any rental fees for the Lapeer County Historical Courthouse Committee to use the historical courthouse for fundraising, that they be waived, because the money in turn is given to Lapeer County for the historical courthouse. And I hadn't thought about it when you had talked about the cleaning fee. I myself have been in there and cleaned, and I mean upholstery, the furniture, before events is what we do. But we will put in there if you want the maintenance or the cleaning fee, refundable cleaning fee.
And this is This is for Lapeer County Historic Courthouse Committee only, correct?
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Second, I,
Linda asked me to see if I had any additions, and I was in a rush and I didn't do this. The thing I think that we're missing here is that we've got probably 3 groups, very specific groups that have allowed us in some way to do something that raises, while they're doing their function, they allow us to raise a significant amount of money with it. And that's part of the issue, and that would include like the Lapeer County Historical Society, the group that puts on the play. I'm not sure of the name of that group. And then the one group that puts on the ladies night.
Yeah.
Those 3 specific groups have, over a number of years, helped us by providing an opportunity in different ways to raise significant monies.
We can do raffles, 50/50s.
So what this motion is asking for though, is for the Lapeer Historic Committee only.
Yeah,
Is what it's asking.
Right, and I would
So
add
this
some
is,
language.
this is not the correct motion.
I was thinking maybe if I can suggest wording, something to the effect of after the Lapeer County Courthouse Committee and certain specific organizations that help.
That's pretty vague.
that's just, that's not, you need to be specific. You can't just say certain
I'm
organizations.
certainly not gonna vote for, something that is not vague. No way.
Okay.
I mean, you
Well,
guys you want something particular, I think it needs to be spelled out in the motion.
It does.
So I would recommend we move this on and add to full board, and we'll get the names of the 3 specific organizations that need to be added. And again, it would be only, I mean, those organizations could do other fundraisers, and we may not be involved. It wouldn't cover those fundraisers. It's only where the historic committee also has a role in raising funds at the same time.
And I understand that, but I think it needs to be spelled out very clear in the motion. So, every group in the world that goes, oh yeah, we'll let you sell buttons. We want to use it for free.
We'll donate $50.
Yeah. That's not our intent.
I
I don't think that's
not
Linda's
the
intention at all.
No, and I understand that, but like I say, I would like it spelled out in the motion very clearly, what exactly you guys are asking for.
Is that all right, Linda? Because full board, we're gonna approve it one way or another.
Well,
Yeah.
question, are we proceeding with motion 1 or motion 2?
I heard Dial said we're just gonna move the issue to next week and they'll bring forth a new motion, so.
Which is both, isn't it?
But, I mean, there's kind of 2 different paths to go, the path of motion 1 or the path of motion 2, I guess.
I'm asking for motion 1.
Well, and that's exactly why I want to get away, because you're gonna probably ask for motion 1, and then someone's gonna say, hey, but I thought we're amending the second motion. So
For
that's
discussion.
what I'd like to establish is which way do we want to go for them to make the amendment? Do we want them to amend motion 1 or motion 2? That's, I guess, what I would ask, so we don't have further confusion next week.
Is the main difference just that ceiling or that bar, whatever the case may be, that raised more than 200? So that's the only difference. Right?
That's the difference, yes.
So you're saying maybe we should at least discuss that now, clear up
Yes.
that issue right now?
So then when they bring a motion forward, amendment next week, we'll know which motion we're amending. So we don't have 2 different motions and, oh, which one we amend. So,
Any thoughts on that, Linda?
I'm asking for motion 1. It's anything that we're raising money for, regardless of the threshold.
so
Because we're giving into the county.
are you willing to make that motion? Because it has to go next week anyways.
No,
No,
it doesn't have to.
the
We're just
topic.
having a discussion right now. We don't, the only motion is just moving the issue.
Okay.
And show, if there's consensus among the board that there's a preference of one motion over the other, I mean, or they can bring both again next week with the language of additional groups or whatever different requirements, filtered into each one, so we don't have to decide on a motion. We can talk about it.
Can't you put everything in motion once? Can't you put the addition of the names and everything else
In
in
one.
one, rather than having the second one there, which you have
That's-
$200 or you don't need both of these.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But that wasn't, I didn't know if the board would approve that first one.
Well, and that was my point, is to get one moved forward, and then we amend, because it's not passed this board anyways until next week, so we pass it right now as one or two motions, then
But
amend
you
it.
don't need to pass it, you just, like I said, just by consensus and discussion.
But the only one we need to move is really one with the additions that they put in it, right?
Or just move the issue.
Right, smooth issue.
The cleaning up.
That's right.
Okay.
Actual motion on that?
Well, certainly.
Okay. I would move, I would make a motion that we move this to next week.
That's what,
Move a motion one with the changes.
no, we move the issue of the courthouse.
So we're gonna redebate this whole thing next week at the full board?
We'll try to have more specific language.
Please. Okay, we have a motion just to move the issue to next week. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. With the names.
Pose same sign, motion carries. Administrative, Restoration, Finance, Board of Commissioners. Proposed motions from ARPA Committee from August 5th and August 12th. Brandon, would you like to take my job, read those motions?
Yeah.
No, I'll give it to Brian, I'm sorry, because he's on the committee.
I was a
I'm
bit
sorry.
confused, but I
Wrong
was gonna do
man,
it.
wrong man.
So, that's what you wanted.
You took opportunity to say no to him and you didn't choose it. Gee.
Yeah, right.
So the first one was a motion by Zender, supported by Henning, to recommend to the committee of the whole pursuant to the recommendation of the Art Committee to authorize the building and ground / Parks Department to replace outdated security access card program software at the cost not to exceed $1,000 to be paid from Fund 281. Motion carried unanimously.
And Fund 281 is,
ARPA, American Rescue Plan.
thank you. Just want to clarify that.
Anybody have any questions on that one?
I'll support.
We have a motion to support, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, motion carries.
Second one was motion by Zender, supported by Henry, to recommend the committee of the whole pursuant to the recommendation of the Art Committee to authorize the building ground / Parks Department to purchase an all-utility recreational vehicle and related equipment for sidewalk and pathway cleaning for the safety of the public at the county park facilities at no cost to exceed $43,295 to be paid from Fund 281. Motion was carried unanimously. And just for, I guess, clarification on that a little bit, it's a UTV that will be used to clear sidewalks. The purpose of this is for the parks to buy that, because we can use the ARP money. But it would be available to be used throughout the county, at our other buildings and stuff like that as well.
I'll support for discussion, and if there's a couple questions, I can jump on.
Yeah, just quick question. So, UTV can mean a lot of things. Could you give me like an example of what that would be?
I believe this one was a Can-Am Grand UTV.
Okay.
So it's gonna have a plow, a brush, a salt.
Gotcha.
This one also will have the sticker that this vehicle will move fast enough that it can be driven from one park to the next or back here. this is roadworthy.
So under the ARP rules, we're only allowed to spend money certain ways. And being that we can use this in driving for the park, but it would also be able to be used at any of our other county buildings. For example, this one. So, but it's actually to be able to be driven from one location to another instead of having to trailer it.
Then I think you explained what the related equipment was, because that was
Shelter,
a high
brush.
price tag otherwise. And with that price tag on both that second motion and the upcoming third motion, can you explain a little bit about the numbers that were derived? Is that a bid, and is that a state bid, or is there competitive bids?
There's competitive bids. On the next one, which is through the state purchasing program, obviously, through this one, they looked at several different units. And this was the best fit for the job.
We're also keeping it within the county. Like, we're getting bids from different companies within the county that sells this type of equipment and things, so.
I guess that's one of my questions is, a lot of times, big ticket items like this will actually have that purchase come before the board, and it'll be, we've got quotes from these three, and it was, the lowest quote, or we didn't include quotes for anyone besides this one, because this one is right from the state contract. Is this board gonna see any of that stuff besides just the motion?
No, I don't believe that's the intention of the committee. We are looking at those quotes, we're making sure that we're following the process and getting 3 quotes where acceptable. Sometimes, you just can't get 3 quotes on everything. There just isn't 3 manufacturers that make a certain product. But in this case, we did get quotes from local suppliers. And like I said, then the next one was through the state process.
So I guess my question then, because we're gonna probably see this come up from time to time, I have a.
You're gonna see more coming up, but let's talk about some problems we've been having as a committee.
Okay.
And first of all, out at our parks, we haven't really done anything to our parks in many years, and they're in very bad shape. So what we can spend the money on, we're very limited on what we're allowed to spend the money on, is entertainment, parks and recreation, things of that nature. We're not allowed to spend it on everything in the world. We can't do that. But what we're finding at the parks, they've never had a tractor at the parks. The parks are very big, that had a bucket on it. Why that ever happened, I don't know. In fact, one of those tractors is older than he is. So, but then to try to find a tractor, we went out to every dealer that sells tractors in this county. Do you know that we went to, I think, John Deere, we went to New Holland, we went to Massey Ferguson, we went to all of them, and said, we need 2 tractors like this. I'm sorry we can't get them. We'll order them, maybe you'll have them by next year. We're running into that with everything we're trying to do, everything. It's like we are with police cars. What do they tell us on those Chargers? Same thing.
2 years.
3 years.
2 years.
2 years before we can get any new Dodge Charger police cars. They take a special chip so they can go super fast, but they're not available. So we're running into all these kinds of problems. And it's creating a lot of, so what we're trying to do as a committee, we look for, we go out, we try to find some place to buy something or do something. But go around, look at the lots. Look at the car lots, look at anything.
So if I can, I understand all that information. What I was gonna say is, especially moving forward with this ARP stuff, I wanna discuss the protocol of, normally when a decision is made here at this level, on that level of expenditure, there is something in our packet or something in the motion that indicates it's either a sole source, it's a state contract, or here's the 3 bids, because when it reaches this public body here, this is where the transparency with the public, this is where we can't, the committee can make the recommendation, but we really can't make the decision without that information. Otherwise, with the transparency thing, it can always be alleged, well, you had 3 bids and you didn't go with the cheapest bid, you went with the guy you knew. A friend of yours that's got a business here or a business there. So what I would request is the motions that we have here, those ones that are sole source, it's included in the motion so that we know that. And those that the committee did the time to do the work and get the bids, that be included in our board packet in the future when we're making a decision here. And in this particular case, this has to go next week, the full board for final approval. So maybe those can then go in the packet for next week. So at least when this board is making a decision on those expenditures, again, we're taking the recommendation, and we appreciate all the work that the committee's doing, but we have to be able to have that information for transparency, so.
If you want to look at number 5, here's the only thing we can do with these. The number 5, what we're doing is pursuant to the recommendation of the airport to authorize buildings and ground parks department to purchase 2 4-wheel drive tractors, related equipment attached to the cost of $32,800 each. Total cost not to exceed $65,600 to be paid for from Fund 281. What we're asking for is the permission from this board to go out and find 2 tractors and be able to purchase them. A lot of this stuff, we're asking permission from the board to be able to proceed with a lot of this.
Because I agree with Wendy, and I hear what you're saying, so that's what we should clarify, this is just for you to go out and do that. But even if it's just one, having this in front of us, so we can all say we do diligence, we did our homework, we just gotta narrow that down. You know what, we put out these bids, we're lucky to get one, or this is the reason why, but we have that in front of us, because what we're saying here is great, but down the road, they look at the paperwork, and they're like, we're not here, like, who authorized that, what reason, so. And so the clinic just has to prove, when we do, I just have that information.
And we can certainly do that with, with the key man and stuff like that. The tractor one is vague. Quite frankly, it's vague for a reason, because we were thinking we were gonna buy Massey Ferguson's.
That's possible,
But at this point, that's not a guarantee. They did find the plow truck. So we're pretty happy about that.
And on those type of situations, I'd recommend the same thing we do with the sheriff's department, where we give him authority to go out and present the contract before the board. We've approved of it in concept. The final one has to come back here before the board for approval. So just need to maybe add something in that language on those 2 tractors to say that we give permission for the committee to seek these tractors at no more than this price and return the final purchase agreement to the board for approval. So again, at least there's, all the details finally take place in a full body, just to avoid that stuff is being done behind the scenes in the committee. So maybe we can address each one of these, because each one of them has a different nuance. Like the second motion we're discussing right now, we're saying that that one is a sole source, or that one has bids.
I believe because of the equipment that is on it, I believe it's sole source.
And so that one wasn't a state contract, that was just.
Yep.
So just so I understand the progression of the discussion, from now on, are we going to have the ARPA committee just attach the bids following
Yeah,
the motion?
the,
Is that basically what was
Yeah,
decided?
yeah.
I know it was kind of round robin, so that's the decision.
and what we can attach bids to, we will,
Perfect.
and the stuff that's sole source or state bid, then
You'll just mark an explanation.
And we basically need to make sure that each one of these motions that we're doing right now, that the wording is specific, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that's gonna end up being shown in record is the motion. So like I say, I don't wanna see 6 months from now, somebody questioning, hey, that piece of equipment that you guys got, we found the motion, you guys spent $43,000. Did you put that out for bid? Was that a state contract? So we should include the language in each one of these motions, just because that becomes permanent.
All right, thank you.
So this one,
so number two, there's motion and support.
I don't know, was there?
I'll move it as not.
There was.
Was there a motion in support for the
Yeah.
43,000?
I supported it, and I supported it for discussion. So like I say, my discussion, I would like to just see added into that motion on that price tag, that was sole source after research. That was sole source acquisition, or sole source acquisition
And then you want to see the copy of the bid.
in the packet
In
for
the
next
packet for
week's
next week.
full board. So we would normally have it attached here, but we can just do it next week, because this will be finalized the next week. You good with that, motion maker?
Okay. Have a motion support for number 2, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries.
And then number 3, I think you said was.
Number three, basically, make the motion, supported by Henning to recommend to the committee, the whole pursuant to the recommendation of the Air Committee to authorize the Buildings, Grounds, and Parks Department to purchase a truck and plow for safety and well-being of the public employees at the county-owned properties. Cost not to exceed $52,820 through the state bid pricing, to be paid from Fund 281. Motion is carried unanimously.
And I'll support that one, because that one does clarify state bid prices, and again, if we can just include in next week's packet, the invoice paperwork for that.
What's our plan for the currently existing workforce?
So,
We'll send them to auction, they've got 3,000 plus hours on them.
Yeah.
we're gonna send a few of them to auction. The way the Parks Department is staffed currently, it's through basically the Division of Community Mental Health. So one of the issues that they have is if they're teaching somebody how to drive a zero turn, sometimes it's not us to have them out on the nice new mower. So they are gonna keep 2 of them, one at each park for backup and training. And then get
Thank you.
Okay, so that was.
I don't think we voted on the truck. This is the truck. Kind of drifted off into lawnmowers.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Number three, we got a motion of support from number three. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, same sign, motion carries.
So the fourth one is, motion by Zender, supported by Hammond, to recommend committee to the whole pursuant recommendation to our committee to authorize the building and parks department to purchase 3 commercial Exmark lawnmowers from Lumberjack Shack at the cost of $8,800 each. Total not to exceed $24,400 for use at both county parks to be paid for from Fund 281. Motion carried unanimously. We did not make him re-bid these because we just did it like a month and a half ago.
But this was bid, like I said, that would be my question in the motion. We're purchasing it from Lumberjack Shack, so somewhere in that motion needs to indicate that was the low bidder, or is it that?
So it's the exact, use the quotes that we had from a month and a half ago, that we purchased the one lawnmower. So we didn't make it go out,
Okay.
re-bid.
So we could put that in motion. Do some bids.
Yeah, we can, and like I said, we can pull the records from the original stuff and include it with this for information for.
We're also listening to buildings and grounds, plenty, and people that want, have to use this equipment. Not necessarily make recommendations where to buy it from, but they're making recommendations on the type of equipment that they would like to have used. So we got a motion of support for that one.
What's that
Four.
support?
A motion and support for number 4. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries.
The fifth one was motion by Zender, supported by Henning, to recommend the committee of the whole pursuant to the recommendation of the Art Committee to authorize the Buildings and Grounds Parks Department to purchase 2 4-wheel assist tractors and related equipment and attachments, cost of $32,800 each. Total cost not to exceed $65,600 to be paid from Fund 281. Motion carried unanimously. Again, this one, the tractors that we had approved were Massey Ferguson's. Since then, we've learned that we don't believe that those are going to be available in the near future. Just for the record, the Buildings and Grounds / Parks Department has 3 tractors. The 1969 John Deere, probably in the 70s David Brown. That one has a loader. If you want to see it, it's over at the buildings maintenance building behind there. It's a really nice tractor. And then they have about a 15-year-old Kubota with no loader up at Trzuski. So we're going to get these 2 tractors to put at the parks. I believe John's intent is to bring the Kubota down to the maintenance area, get rid of the David Brown and get rid of the John Deere.
At auction,
At auction.
and assuming we're gonna buy all these brand new, is the plan?
Yes.
As you can see, the other ones have lasted 50 years, so we want to make sure that when we buy new ones, that they have a.
We actually do have buildings at both parks that these tractors will be able to go in, so they're in out of the weather and all that sort of stuff. So there's no reason that they should last quite some time.
Yeah, no, I agree, that's what I was asking. I mean, I still use my 1942 Farmall for all my farming stuff, so.
Well, in Dryden, they were actually using the John Deere to plow the snow. So, with a backblade. So if you've ever done that, it's not a lot of fun, and it's pretty cold. So it will be much more.
Driveway shrinks.
Much more.
Keeps closing.
Exactly.
They will be much more efficient.
So for tractors, really, then we're not sure what we're buying at this point.
At this point, we're not 100% sure. That's correct.
John knows bustle, it's abilities and gravel. I'm sure anybody in the audience understands if you buy a new tractor today, you're probably gonna have to buy the equipment you want with that tractor because the way PTOs and everything hook up today, all their equipment, I mean, is specific a lot to the tractor model because of all the new rules and regulations. So we request wherever they buy these tractors that they make sure that they get the adequate equipment they need when they buy those tractors from the same manufacturer.
You're gonna see more of this stuff back out there. I mean, you know, that's actually just the cost for the tractors. It's not the equipment, so.
So from Lenny's point of view, how do we handle number 5?
So that was, so my question kind of, it sounded like from the explanation from Gary, there's a supply chain shortage.
Sure.
And so, if bidding is not gonna be able to be possible, then maybe right after, that fourth line related equipment and attachments, but right before the cost, we can interject as a sole source purchase due to a supply chain shortage.
Or just to be able to proceed, to look or whatever.
But again, I heard from you that we need this.
Right.
They're not available. You've already looked, they're not available. So when one does come as a sole source due to a supply chain shortage, we're gonna authorize you to purchase. I would be fine with that, just so long as that is made clear in the motion, that that's why we're giving this authority.
Sure.
So, did you get that wording one more time? So in that fourth line, it says related equipment and attachments as a sole source purchase due to a supply chain shortage. Is the motion maker okay with that?
Yes.
I would say that when we're doing it that way, occasionally we may get stuck where the price is actually going to be slightly different than.
Sure, because it's going up every day.
Right.
So
So instead of cost of up to, because then it's gonna be more than that, then you have to come back to the board and say, hey, good news is we found one, bad news is it's gonna be,
Right, that's not numbered out.
right. So the cost of up to
We're gonna have to exceed the same. Another thing, we're looking for tractors. I mean, there was some other tractors out there that are very good tractors. The problem is they don't have service centers with the tractors. We would prefer, and the county would prefer that if we're gonna have something we want to be able to service, especially the new ones.
have local service.
Right.
That's what we're talking about, local service.
And we've had, like I say, buildings and grounds before come to us and say, hey, there's 3 bids in your package. We're recommending this one. They're not the lowest bid, but we're recommending this one for this reason. Because they, so that's why, like I say, this decision-making public body on the way that we have those. So we have a motion support now with that motion of those additions, Mr. Chairman.
Tough to buy some tractors. Okay, we have a motion and support with changes. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Number 6 is motion by Zunder, supported by Henning, to recommend committee of the whole pursuant to the recommendation of the ARP committee to authorize Buildings, Grounds, Parks Department to purchase 13 replacement outdoor grills at both county parks, cost not to exceed $2,200 to be paid from Fund 281. It's really simple. These are the charcoal grills that are out in the parks. The ones that are currently there, there's several of them, that the bases are rusted off. They just need to be replaced.
And that $2,200 for all 13. And don't ask if they're made in this country, because they can tell you they're not. We'll be replacing them in 5 years because the bottom will burn out.
Support.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, same sign, motion carries.
Okay, so for 8B, the August 12th ARP committee meeting, motion by Zender, support by Henning to recommend to the committee of the whole pursuant to recommendation of the ARP committee to authorize the county controller, administrator, and building and grounds to begin seeking bids, quotes for replacement of carpeting in the various county facilities as needed for health, safety of the public and staff. Motion carried unanimously. So it's come to our attention that especially in this building, I believe the second floor, the carpet is in normal shape. It's taped down with duct tape. So we're looking for authorization to go through the buildings, figure out what needs carpet, what needs to be replaced, and get prices on replacing it. Support.
And there was conversation because at first, someone recommended or somebody asked to replace all the carpet in all the buildings. Why are you kind of going to ask that? You just kind of said, wait a minute. Okay, we got a motion to support, all in favor, so saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, same sign, motion carries.
Oh, actually, I did have one quick question on that. We'll be looking at options to change to tile flooring in some locations as well, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, certainly.
That's all I wanted to.
Because it's easier to keep clean.
Yeah, exactly.
Some areas, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to put tile or anything
Yeah.
down. Just carpet it, replace it every 10 or 20 years or whatever it needs. It is what it is.
And the first question came out of the prosecutor's office.
So the second one here is motion by Henning, supported by Zender, to recommend to the committee of the whole pursuant to recommendations of the ARP committee to authorize the county controller, administrator, and buildings, grounds, and parks department to approve the pedestrian connector path at General Square, Memorial Park, that leads to Pollyant Trail with costs not to exceed $160,000 pursuant to a bid process to be paid from Fund 281. So what this is the Friends of the Pollyant Trail actually hired Rowe to do some examples of trail and the connector trail. So we looked at this, thought it was a good time to invest some money into the park. Putting the connector trail, there's an existing trail there now, but it's pretty rough. There is no material. They just went and cut whatever trees were in the way or whatever brush was in the way to make a path. This is going to be a limestone path from the park to the Pollyant Trail. 10-foot wide limestone.
It's wooden bridges.
Specked out by Dixie Row.
The purpose obviously is to increase the traffic of people off the trail, coming off the trail to use the county park.
Or
If
Or vice
those,
versa.
Lenny, you remember the situation, remember how we had conversation a few years ago, just before he went into what you call a recession, Great Recession, when we had, it was 3 acres of property down there that was all swamp. we had a big discussion over. But in my opinion, we grossly overpaid for it, but I didn't vote for it either. But we have some other bids on this. He's looking at $160,000 to use limestone and something that'll last. We actually got a less of a bid to use wood chips. But if you've ever used wood chips, you know they last about 4 years or 5 years and they just deteriorate into the ground, so. Everything's expensive, but no, this doesn't, it's just not a path with limestone on it. Wooden structures, built structures like bridges and stuff you see in state parks and everything else is right there. I'm trying to get some match money to help us do that, so it has to be done a certain way.
My only questions,
Only?
yes,
Okay.
is in regards to where that trail currently exists, is it well known by the property owners that trail does exist on their property?
We bought it from them.
Okay.
It's ours.
It's
ours.
It's the county's
I
property.
just have to ask.
It's the
I
county's
just have
property,
to
it's not
ask.
the state's, it's not part of the
I
trail,
just
it's
have
the
to ask
county's
that
property.
question.
The chairman was criticizing the amount we paid for it.
Yeah, it sure was.
The connector trail is all on county-owned property.
Things are expensive. We also let everybody know that when you use limestone, you have to have a special type rake to drag behind something to be able to manage it, just like on the road commission has for limestone roads. They have to be able to dig it up. I know, I watch them fly all the time. Okay,
I'll second it. It's not.
we have a motion.
Motion.
Seconded. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, and the fourth one is. or
Third one.
Sorry. Motion by Zender, supported by Henning, to recommend the committee of the whole pursuant to the recommendation of the ARP committee to authorize the county controller administrator to begin the RFP process for a compensation and labor analysis study at the cost not to exceed $100,000 to be paid from the Fund 281. So basically, this is the study that we've all been talking about that we need to upgrade.
From Ryan. Really did, that
I'll
whole
just,
thing
I'll just
upgraded.
note that personnel was before, so we did it first.
But yeah,
But if you'd had it right, we'd have already been doing
Just
this.
as we talked about personnel, the importance of at least this motion and this process, the RFP, to send the message to the workforce that this has not just fallen on deaf ears and died. We definitely realize that the whole drive, the analysis study is stale. We need to do a new market analysis and try to make sure that we're at least competitive in the marketplace. So this at least shows the workforce and the community that we're beginning that process.
I have questions if we can do it for $100,000, but it's a start, right?
Yeah, we did. We don't really have a hard figure. So when we come back, it'll be a lot more detailed.
Has been seconded.
I say that.
If we have a motion and support, all in favor, so say aye.
Aye.
Same sign, motion carries.
Okay, the fourth one is motion by Zender, supported by Henning, to recommend to the committee of the whole pursuant to recommendation of the ARP committee to authorize the county controller or administrator to begin the process for developing a job training assistance and retention program for county employees and bring the recommendation back to the committee. So all we did was basically authorize them to look into this, to get us some costs, that sort of thing.
I'll support that.
It seems as if we have a lot of employees that we seem to train. We don't have a good retention program because if we get them trained to other counties,
What would a retention program look like?
that's what we're asking, that put one together so we can bring it back. We're just asking for authorization to.
Well, I just want clarification.
Yeah, I didn't have Gwen here to describe it would be, I think, better, but essentially, there are certain job classifications that are general to a lot of departments. And in those areas, we're finding a lot of turnover. The intent was to figure out how to do some training that can be then monitored and certified so that it gives them a sort of an extra challenge to complete that, to be qualified, probably would be reflected then in their salary. Would increase their salary if they chose to do it. This would not be something that they probably be required to do, but would be there to benefit them.
See how these go to next week, he should be here next week, hopefully he'll be able to, on that for next week.
I supported it. Okay, we have a motion to support. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. Sorry about the delay in getting to this. Until I get on the gentleman from the prosecutor, sitting back there. Brandon? And you also asked me to have one that you wanted an emergency
Yeah, and
put on.
yeah, but I'll make a note of that one. Actually, it's already on there, just asking them if we can just authorize them to start filling our position. But first one, I make a motion to recommend the committee of the whole to authorize the circuit/family court to post and fill a full-time contractual probation officer position to primarily supervise 17-year-old juveniles under the new state guidelines and meet program needs to be fully funded by E-Grams grant, with the understanding that this position will be reviewed by the personnel committee prior to the expiration of the grant. That one did carry unanimously. So this is in regards to the change in law that took place, and now that we have to deal with 17-year-olds, this person will be solely dealing with those juveniles. And in addition, we were concerned, the committee was concerned about time used by this new person, making sure that they have, can fill their full-time obligations, part-time, whatever it is. So before the grant expires and we have to take this on full as the county, and when the state money runs out, we asked to review that to make sure that it's worth our time and money. Is there anything else that the committee members have to add to that?
It is contractual.
It is contractual, yes.
So
It is
depending
part
on
of-
whether or not the money goes away, the position goes away, and not that liability. Full-time county employee.
So with that, is that all they're going to do is work with the 17-year-olds?
Primarily.
That's the intent, but again, that will fall under the supervision of Lori. She has to stay within the guidelines of the grants. We kind of used the 416 road patrol money and sheriff's deputy dailies as an example. If at some point in time, let's say that the person we find is only working 30 hours a week and 10 hours a week, Lori's using them here or there, the grant's only gonna pay for that 30, and she'll manage that other 10 within her child care fund. She'll get a better understanding as the year goes.
Jackie, you've been involved in this, or anything you want to add to this?
Lenny's right.
And the funding is covered in that extra money that we gave her a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Right now, it's a lot of uncertainty at the amount of use, so.
Yeah,
That's
exactly, and that's pretty much what she laid out, is, she doesn't know how much work this is gonna be. She's worried that it won't be completely full-time, that's why we asked for it to be reviewed when money runs out and it's be contractual.
I support that.
Brandon? Oh, we have.
No, we had a
All right. We're gonna want to do it one at a time?
Yeah.
All right, all in favor of the motion, should say aye.
Aye.
Oh, same sign. Motion carries.
I move to recommend, I move to the committee of the whole to authorize probate/family court to post and fill one full-time parent aid caseworker position and to eliminate the part-time parent aid position to be funded by Child Care Fund 292, and further to approve the revised job description for said position, which is attached. This is essentially all to do with the work taking up more time and us eliminating a part-time position to make it full-time to be more efficient, is essentially what happened. Is there any other questions on that? Or any other comments?
It is motion then. A motion is support, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, same sign, that motion carries. Brendan?
I move the committee of the whole to authorize the sheriff's department to temporarily increase the rate of pay to $20 an hour for the employees working in the Marine Division's Slow No Wake Grant Program only through the end of fiscal year 2021.
I have a question, is that when the grant expired?
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion to support, all in favor of the motion, saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, same sign, motion carries. I think the regular wage is what, $14? $11.
Yeah.
All right. Brendan?
I move the committee of the whole to authorize the sheriff's department to fill 2 vacant road patrol deputy positions, number 156 and 157, at no additional cost to the county's general fund.
Support.
Are the 156 and 157, are they vacant, Jackie?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, they're both vacant, all right. We have a motion to support? Okay. We have a motion support? All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. Brendan?
I move the committee of the whole to authorize community mental health to fill 2 full-time and 4 part-time ABA technicians in order to meet Medicaid guidelines and program/clients' needs in the Autism Benefit Service Program, and any subsequent vacancy should an internal transfer occur at no additional cost to the county general fund.
Support.
I have a motion to support. All in favor of the motion, saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. Brendan?
I move the committee of the whole to authorize the community mental health to fill 1 full-time master level therapist position, 601, due to a recent resignation effective August 16, 2021, as well as any subsequent vacancies should an internal transfer occur at no additional cost to county general fund.
Support.
I have a motion to support. All in favor of the motion, saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries.
I move the committee of the whole to authorize the prosecuting attorney to fill 1 full-time assistant prosecuting attorney 2 position due to a recent resignation effective August 27, 2021, and further to authorize the prosecutor to negotiate the salary at other than entry level for this position due to the specialized and critical nature of the position, as well as a labor market shortage, should the potential candidate have extensive experience in the neglect and abuse case at no additional cost to the county general fund.
Lenny, this was sent down because of your request? Wasn't this requested? Wasn't this
That was
requested?
backup for this position.
Yes.
This was back up for this?
Yes.
It was because John wasn't gonna be here.
Right.
Right.
He's here.
I understand.
Any questions on it?
No,
Okay,
I've already said, I didn't know.
all right. We have a motion and support for this?
I have a question there. Are we down starting to let the prosecutor?
No. On a case-by-case basis, the motion is pretty clear. This is an extremely specialized position. And so because of that, so if he finds a candidate that has those very specialized abilities, he needs to be, again, we talked about as far as rising scale. So we've done that in the past with positions that we have difficulty in filling. He already anticipates the difficulty with this one here, and those type of cases you can't let unaddressed. So are we doing this now as a blanket policy? No. Are we doing it on a case-by-case basis after the committee has met and had those discussions with the department head and deemed that that's appropriate? Yes.
Well, and just to make it clear too, Linda, we discussed this pretty extensively during personnel committee. And if the person that the prosecutor has in mind does not end up fulfilling that position, we do expect to be put back in entry level.
That's what's already the way it is.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to support? To approve this. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries.
Move committee of the whole to authorize the health department to fill one vacant, non-regular public health nurse position due to a recent vacancy and to meet the public health needs at no additional cost to the county general fund.
Support.
Then a motion support, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries.
I move the committee of the whole to authorize the health department to fill one vacant full-time lead account clerk / computer technician position at no additional cost in general, county general fund, and further to eliminate one full-time account clerk position should an internal promotion occur. Essentially, what we're doing here is we're filling a vacancy that's been vacant for a long time and getting rid of another position while we're doing it,
Support.
potentially.
We have a motion and support, all in favor, so say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries.
All right, and the last one for the health department, I'm actually gonna ask, so I'm gonna ask for this to be approved, but I'm also gonna ask, it's okay that she begin filling that as soon as possible. If there's any objections to that, so the motion is to the committee of the whole to authorize the health department to hire one full-time contractual, non-regular public health nurse position in order to meet public needs during the COVID pandemic. I'm gonna ask that not only we pass this, but also that she be allowed to begin the hiring process right now.
Phil,
We've discussed that before, many years over the committee. You can do all the way up to the hire. This board does not have you, we didn't give ourselves authority last week at full board to do this. So this is only a committee level. You don't have the authority. So all these motions move forward to next week for final approval. So she knows that she can jump through whatever hurdles, line people up, but she can't actually make legally the hire until we legally pass that motion so we can move forward.
I support it. Just check, does that meet your needs?
Well, it would be helpful for her to be able to work the hours starting now in order to be able to keep up with the workload, but, you know, I'll have to follow whatever you need me to do.
All right. Otherwise, it'd be quite a huge exception.
Well, if you had a labor attorney here, the labor attorney would tell you.
okay, we have a motion and support, all in favor, so say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries.
And then the final motion is a motion to the whole to authorize the county controller / administrator to proceed, gather information in order to move forward with a wage compensation and labor analysis study in conjunction with the ARPA committee and report back.
Support that.
So this is just personnel supporting what they.
I don't know what we do with that one.
I was gonna say, we could discuss it. I don't think we actually have to move it now because we already took action on the previous one.
All right, well, I'll remove my motion.
Okay, you got a motion and support, all in favor?
Nope, I removed it.
You removed it?
Yeah,
It's been discussed.
Okay,
We did it
Sure.
last year.
Yeah. No, we were earlier.
all right, that's fine, whatever. Okay, we need to do a couple things. We need to pay Howard Shipman's invoice.
I'll move that.
Support.
We have a motion and support to pay Howard Shipman's invoice. You see what else is on there, I don't want to miss anything, because Commissioner Snyder will remind me that I missed something. Okay, get the motion support to pay that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, motion carries. Budget amendments and or appropriation transfer. Community mental health. Jackie, did you approve this?
Yes.
Okay. Have a motion and support to approve that, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, motion carries. Budget updates ongoing through adoption in October. I think we presented a draft or have a draft to be presented next week. We're not gonna be able to discuss it today, but if you have it in front of you, you can take it, look at it, so we can do it after next.
Is
Jackie?
anyone interested in a link to look at it online?
Actually, most of our old eyes, we prefer this.
Okay,
We prefer old school. Actually, on the paper, we
Yeah.
can, What about highlighters and red pens?
Worried on it.
Okay.
Takes a while to find things, that's why.
On the computer, small printers, even smaller.
Okay,
Check whatever letters they are.
budget updates, we got that. Second public time, who would like to address the board during the second public time?
I just have something quick. I believe her name is Diane, spoke of the door-to-door. And a month ago, I was in Oakland County at an event, and there were two older ladies, close to their 80s, and they were speaking to me about the fear of someone coming to their, they were two sisters who lived in a condominium together, and their fear of someone coming to their door because they had chosen not to be vaccinated, and they were fearful that someone would, I told them, don't answer your door, but that they would be pressured into something, and then who's gonna call 911? Where's the backup of medical services if something happens? And we all know that there are things that are happening, adverse reactions. And they were very fearful of that. So I understand what Diane was talking about and the fear that goes along with that, so.
Anybody else like to address this board during the second public time?
Just like to make a suggestion to the Parks Department that they explore having some kind of off-road park. A lot of people in Lapeer County have ATVs, off-road vehicles, and I think it would be great to have some place organized to take them.
Anybody else during the second public time?
A little bit of background on Dave Claper. I'm a former Coast Guard contract person, and I'm very familiar with a lot of the contracts, how they work, and I've written quite a few myself. The one thing that I encourage in any of the contracts for Parks and Rec, when you bid on a tractor, make sure you've got service for them. What will happen a lot of times is, oh yeah, we got a real deal here. And then all of a sudden, it's like buying a Jaguar. Where are you gonna fix it at here in Lapeer County? So if you buy something, it's nice to have it bought locally where they also service. The other thing is the training. I was also a trainer in many different areas. Sometimes picking that trainer, it might not be the supervisor. What I found in my experience is when you have somebody that's a supervisor and says, go teach that guy how to drive this piece of equipment, or teach that person how to operate the computer, maybe it should be somebody else. I was a driver trainer for GLTA. I had driver trainer experience. I taught truck drivers how to drive. And I tried to put some other people in, and they didn't have they had the knowledge. They knew how to do it, knew what needed to be done, but they couldn't communicate that to that employee. So I think whoever does it, whether it be them or whether the board has to get involved, I don't know. But to keep morale up is a very important thing. If you have somebody there, I don't want to listen to that person. I don't like him or I don't like her. You're not going to get the message across. I just encourage the board probably to take a look at who they have that's going to be doing this training and retention. It's big if you've got somebody doing the training, if you want to keep retention and keep morale up amongst the group. And I found out over the years that I could take and put Joe Blow over here to do this. He knew it great, but he couldn't teach it. So therefore, the morale started going down. They started gossiping and talking about, oh, that guy over there, he's a jerk. And then you get the morale going down and just all kinds of things. I'm sure most of you here have seen it somewhere along the way.
And I just encourage the board as well as Parks and Rec supervisors. I know we've got some new ones in there now, new employees, and training, very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board during the second public time?
I know I should do this when we do it anyway.
It's always
I'm
your
here
first,
as
too.
public
Sometimes you
time.
want to go with your first instinct, Dave.
If you don't think you can do it, then don't. No, this is
Well, I feel I
public
have
time.
to do it. I feel I have to do it. And I'm up
Can't-
here
can't respond.
in support of our health department director. You know, she got moved earlier. I'm here in support of her and her staff. We work closely with them. I know they've been inundated with all kinds of everything going on out there, whether, you know, COVID, everything going on, trying to get shots out. I think they've done an amazing job. If she can't make it to a meeting or something at night, I don't think her job description requires her to go to Tea Party meetings. So that's just my personal, private opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address this board during the second public time? Hearing and seeing no one, I close the second public time. We have no reason for a closed session today. So that brings me down to one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting's adjourned. Meeting's already been adjourned.
I think something should have been said about those.
I understand. Is anybody gonna be able to go there tomorrow?
I will go.
Joe's, up in Plumbeyville, what's the name of that?
Johnson.
Yeah, I think something should have been.
Is there visitation today in the afternoon, later tonight?
No. Only.
Number two.
Oh, it's just,
Just visit.
Just visitation.
For the, yeah.
Yeah, they have to- They don't know they're gonna go to.